Thanks, everyone. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about ArcGIS Urban. So how many of you out there have actually heard of ArcGIS Urban or have been on the trial that we've been running for a short period? So a couple of you. Good, good. ArcGIS Urban's been out now for about 4 months. It's a brand new product by Esri. And what it's doing is it's taking advantage of the web scene layers that we've all been using now for quite a while. But it's the first real product in an ArcGIS Online environment that is solely as a software as a service. So we've seen Web App Builder, and we've seen some of the other templates that we've got out there. But ArcGIS Urban is really a fully suited software product that's built on ArcGIS Online. So what we're going to have a look at is a little bit what ArcGIS and Urban's all about and where it comes from. Then we're going to have a look, go into a bit of a live demo. Now, I will say that sometimes these modems are a little bit slow, so we'll see how it goes. It is a fairly featured environment. And then we're going to talk about how you actually, as clients, can get in there and start to use it as well, because we've got some goodies there for you to go and work with. So one of the big key things with ArcGIS Urban is that for a long time, we've been seeing that cities have been growing, and the exponential rate of those growths is phenomenal. I'm from Adelaide, and for a long time, we had fairly stagnant growth. This year we've had two buildings alone exceed the growth or exceed the maximum height of where we've previously had height buildings. So that's 2 in 1 year. I went to Melbourne last week for Esri, and the crane index in Melbourne is phenomenal right now. They're going ballistic with their 75-storey buildings going in. One of the challenges with something like that, where you've got all this money coming into the cities and you're building all these buildings, is that the planning rules are having trouble keeping up. Most planning rules that we have out there are actually paper-driven. They're very thick folios, and they're probably quite verbose as well, because there's a lot of regulations that go along with each of those. So Esri decided that maybe we should create a visualization product that allows our planning departments to actually visualize these developments, visualize possible plans and changes as well, and then give people the way to access these. But not just the organisation, but also to be able to get this same data sets out into the community and engage with other organisations. And this is one of the keys, is being able to collaborate with other ArcGIS Online users and other ArcGIS Online organisations so that I can have a master development plan or a master planning application that then can be consumed in another ArcGIS Online organisation, and I can do my own conceptual designs and my own plans, and the master not get affected in any way. The only people who have the master are the people who control the plans. So the sorts of things we can look at is the ability to visualise projects. So how various building projects are changing over time. Are they planned? Are they approved? Those sorts of things. Then be able to go from there and look at entire areas of development. So in this case, City of Melbourne, which we're going to look at in a little while, was actually one of the early adopters that we utilised in the development of the ArcGIS Urban environment. And Fisherman's Bend, which is an area that's going under, is basically being considered right now for a large major urban redevelopment, was one of the areas we looked at for doing this. And we're going to have a little example of doing that today as well. And then some of the things that you want to work with is the ability to have key indicators. So things like population statistics, green index indicators, livability indicators, those sorts of things. When you put in buildings, people want to understand, okay, if I go into this building here, what is the time it's going to take me to the nearest tram? Or how far is the public transport away from where I'm working right now? So you want to be able to publish that kind of information in there as well. And then finally, one of the key areas is, what's that building going to look like? Not just there is a building proposed here, but what's the plan of that building? And how do I actually understand the progress of that building over time as well? Because one of the things that we find when we put a building in, it will go through a life cycle. It'll go into the planning department as, say, a 75-storey building. It'll come out as, say, a 45-storey building. It will have structural changes as well, offsets and those sorts of things. So our community wants to be able to understand how the planning's changed over time as well. So this is where we start to talk about the ArcGIS Urban space and what it's available to us. Now, I do have a video here prepared, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to just see how we go with the actual live product here. So this is an ArcGIS scene. Now, one of the important things here, we can look at this as, we can see this is the City of Melbourne. The first thing I do notice with this is that I have buildings in there, or what we call the white massing models, and I have in here also the buildings at their current proposal status as well. Now, I don't have any satellite imagery in there, but what we have in the capability here is, if I come in and I go in here, you'll see I do have that ability to go and get, say, things like a 3D model. Now, many of us have seen those textured meshes, and I'm able to incorporate that. Now, why would I bring that into the map? Well, I'm actually able to now see and visualize what the rest of the environment looks like around that in a 3D space. And you can see those blue buildings up there. They're giving me a conceptualization of what that possible development might look like in there. And that's being built at this present point in time. The other thing that's really important with this as well is that, I'll just turn that guy off for a moment, is Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane right now are all got underground rail infrastructure being put in. So one of the things we really want to be able to do with this, if I go to my underground space here, is understand where that infrastructure is actually going. So if I just zoom out a little bit, and we'll go into our environment here and look, and I've got a rail tunnel sitting in here. Now, when that draws in, you can now see there's the tunnel going through there, and I can go underground, and I can visualize that. Now, why would I do that? Many buildings that we have in this environment here have very large sub-basements as well. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 car parks underneath there. You want to see where they go down in there. You want to see where the utilities travel through there as well. So you're going to get a developer who's going to put a rail line through there, or they're going to put some other sort of underground infrastructure in there. You need to be able to understand where that actually fits inside that environment as well. So this is where the power of the ArcGIS 3D model really comes into play here. The other real key thing here as well, let's just go back to the schematic view on the top there, is that ArcGIS Urban really takes advantage of the scene space. So what we're looking at there is we're seeing a scene of scenes. So we take my city urban scene that I have on there, and I start to bring in other scenes into this particular environment as well to give me context for my developments. Now you'll notice there's a number of controls over here. We have projects, which is basically these buildings that we see through here, and I'll go back and discuss those in detail in a moment. Plans, which is the larger areas of development. And we have here, I'll go and look at the indicators. Now, ArcGIS Urban comes with a large variety of indicators out of the box. Our Living Atlas has things like the Australian census data in there, and we can start to put that in there as well. But what I can also do is I can go in and get my, say, a custom indicator, for example, and I can build my own. So I might go and get my train access indicator in this particular instance. I'll just zoom out a bit on this. And what it's going to do now is go and get another scene and bring this in and display it in context. You'll also notice what it's doing is the existing schematic or the white massing buildings tend to fade a little bit when that comes in. And now I can get the context or information associated with that. Populates the legend down on the left. Importantly, what I can also do is I can start to configure up the way that this particular index works, or this indicator works. And you can see things like I've got sources. And there's the external scene. I just can go and edit that at any point in time. But I've also got a dashboard. So here's a question for you. Who's built dashboards without maps? No one. That's exactly what I expected, because every conference that I've been to so far, exactly the same response. Who would build a dashboard without a map? It just doesn't make sense, right? We want to see the map. Well, one of the things that we can do with ArcGIS Urban is, for example, that tram information there might be a pie chart that I want to see, or there might be a bar graph I want to see, and that left-hand pane, I can go and build an operational dashboard chart that will actually get embedded in here as well. And that's exactly the way we go about do that. And then I can do things like I can share this to the general public as well. So I can take my ArcGIS Online organisational map that I have there, share it out, and I've got the results going there as well. That's a 2D indicator. Let's just go back, and I'd actually like to go and look at my population statistics now as well. So let's just go and, where are we? Up the top there. And this is actually a population or 3D statistics that I can have sitting in over the top. And as we would expect, there is actually some data that's quite dense for the city of Melbourne. Now you'll notice I'm actually getting data that sits outside of my study area as well. We've only got City of Melbourne massing models in this particular instance, but you can see straight away this is the 3D scene that's coming in there, and any of these items, I can click on them and start to pull out information, just like you would normal GIS system. So if I wanted to go and add a new indicator, it's very simple. Now before I do that, everything I've shown you so far, you don't need an ArcGIS Urban license for, because this is purely visualization. as soon as I go and do something that says, let's go and add over here, and I'll go and add an indicator, at that point, I'm now accessing my ArcGIS and Urban license, and I'm starting to bring in new data that I'm starting to work with. So I can bring in multiple indicators that I have for my particular environment. There is then also, let's just close this down, this ideas area. Now, I spoke before about the ability to take an ArcGIS online version of this and publish it and make it general public. Then we can have our ideas. And ideas is linked to our ArcGIS hub space. And what that allows us to do in there is have the public comment on those building concepts that are going out. So you can see, for example, I've got various sentiments being showed here by the happy or smiley faces. And I can say, well, really what I'd like to go and do is add a new idea. Say down on this particular one down here, for example, and say I'll put in here, for example, we'll go and put in an idea. And when we'll say that, say it's not in my backyard, as most sort of general public seem to do these days, and we'll say it's a sick, not sort of happy person. But then that gets in there, and because it's a public layer, what you can then do with that is then other people can see that public layer as well, and they go, oh look, I kind of agree with that comment, so what I'll do is I'll vote up on that one as well. So let's just go and vote up on that particular one, and I can't vote on my own comment. Wish I could do that. But I'll go and say there's another one down here, for example. Looks like I've done it before, and I can say vote that one up, and it tells me now that that can get voted up, and we can add that one in as well. So I'm able to vote these ones up as I go through as well. And that's the sort of the public interface that's associated with it. It's quite useful if you're going to, say, get a new planning design come in, and you want to publish out that planning design and see what people think about it. Then let's start to think about, I'm going to go and get one of these new plans. Let's go and look at a project, for example. And I've got this turning torso one that sits in down here. Now, I'll just go back one step quickly before I do that. You'll see we have different statuses that I can filter against as well. Out of the box, Urban has its own statuses, but you can actually go and add your own in there as well. You're not restricted. The environment is completely flexible. So let's just go and say I'm looking at all the applied ones, and that's now filtered those, and I want to go and turn this one on. Now, with this particular one, you can see there's a building that's proposed. Now, this is actually a real building, believe it or not. It's not a building that's going to be proposed in Melbourne. It's one that we've sort of doctored up at this point in time. But you can see there's the conceptual design of what that building might look like there, sitting on the screen. What we do like to be able to do is get a good understanding of what that will look like. You can start to see it around there as well. Now, over time, these conceptual designs change. So the BIM model comes in, and you want to update that. You simply go in. It's actually reading in another web scene and bringing that into this environment. That's quite powerful because you can have multiple web scenes and multiple data sets being able to come in here and start to work with this. Importantly with this as well is because I'm now using the ArcGIS Urban license, I can go and configure this, and when I configure that, there we go, you can see I've got different scenarios. So if I get another BIM model comes through, another planning design, I can add that in there as well. And I can then share that out as well, and you can see currently it's shared to the public. But also when I come back to the general in here, I have the option to change the description and also add additional thumbnails and the web page that's associated with it. So in this case, if I go to the project website, you'll see this actually will jump over to the real project website for that particular one. But in your planning departments, for example, if you want to, let's just say go back to this one here, I'll go grab that one. You can see I've got a planning link down here, and this is going off to the Melbourne City Council. It's not a secure site, so it will ask me to say, is this really secure? And it will basically now give me the planning permit information, so you can link this to your organisational planning site as well. So it is just a solution that's designed to actually work inside your environment. So if we now go and look at a larger concept, so this area in here, for example, is called Fisherman's Bend. And I'll go and look at the plans and bring up the Fisherman's Bend area. It's a very large project, and you can see by this picture here that is undergoing redevelopment. It's where Holden's and Mitsubishi used to be, Holden's and Toyota's used to be. So they're going through and remodelling and redeveloping that whole area. And if you'll notice in this particular scenario, I'm seeing some of the blue buildings that are in there. And they're the proposed ones that are in this particular scenario. And you'll notice I've got multiple scenarios. Now if I bring up number 3, for example, the previous blue buildings disappear, and here's another scenario that I've actually got starting to build in. Now this is drawing those on the fly. It's not actually, those ones are not pre-rendered. They're actually being delivered to you on the fly, and the system is actually rendering it client side when it does that. The important thing with this is I do have tools in here so I can understand the shadowing of those buildings, and I can get access to the standard measurement tools. So I might do a distance tool, and you can see as I'm clicking to the top, and I might go to the base of the next door building, I get access to that. Or I can say go and do a slice and dice in here as well. So if I pick this particular panel, we'll say new slice, and once I pick that, then I can start to slide through this and understand. That's pretty powerful because that's not actually data that's sitting back on the server, that's actually slicing data that's sitting there on the screen itself. So what if I want to start to developing these? And this is where it gets really interesting now, is because we can conceptualize lots and lots of data sets and really start to build out different data models. So if we come into our plans here, we'll go back to the Fisherman's Bend demo in here, and with this I will now come in and look at the plan designer. And this is where the real power of the ArcGIS Urban environment comes along, because you'll notice I have over here now my zoning layers, and you can see those starting to highlight on the screen here. I can then, with that particular one, if I just go and change this one, I can also see what the plausible building envelopes might look like for all those planning zones. You get an understanding of what the maximum heights deal with those planning zones. And if I was to go and have a look, say, at some buildings that I've already started to build out, you'll notice that the ones that were blue before are now actually being drawn as conceptual buildings. And I'm able to see here what the actual building envelope is with those particular buildings as well. Not just the zone envelope, but the building envelope that goes with each of those. Because there are height restrictions, there are things like aeroplane flyover restrictions and heritage restrictions. So you can see how those ones fit in there as well. If I look at this in a bit more detail then, and we start to look now at, say, the dashboard, we've got readouts that are going on here, and we're getting an understanding of what the actual increase of buildings is through that particular environment, my original population and what the new population is with those particular buildings that I've got through here. And as you'll see, the mix of property that's going into there is also being reported. And this can be quite important for planners because they really get that idea of what that change is going to be with this new environment. It's 3D, it's intuitive. Let's say then this particular building here, I'd like to understand, if I look at that particular one in the screen there, and we'll go grab this one, I can then report on what that building and what the mix of the floor space is in that one as well. So I can see the plausible type building. Now, one of the things with the ArcGIS Urban environment, it comes with a set of predefined buildings that you can work with, but you can build your own. So if I change this one here, for example, that I've got selected, and we'll just come in and inspect that one, and I come in and edit this, you'll notice at the moment that this particular building is 150 metres tall. What I'd really like to do is we'll make this guy 50 metres tall, and when I go and put that in, it will actually go back and procedurally redraw that one for that particular height. And that's gone and put that through. And you'll notice the actual building squashes out wider as well because it has a floor space requirement. And when that floor space requirement comes into play, the height means that it can go actually out wider. As it goes taller, you get a higher floor space, and so the building gets narrower. So there are some building requirements that go along with that as well. And we have many, so if I come back here and let's say go to do the override on the floor space requirements, and I'll say maybe that's a 25, for example, when I do that, it will actually now regenerate that building on the fly, and I'm getting a plausible looking building for that particular floor space that I've got there, or that particular parcel. Now, this is all conceptual. There is a relationship with this and City Engine. So City Engine can connect to these scenarios and then bring these down. And what you can do with that is then texture model those into this, change the way they look, retexture them, redesign them, and then push them back up so you get a better looking representation that you can push out to your general public. The last thing I want to just quickly go and do with this then is I'm going to do something that most planners wouldn't do, which is go and split the parcel. Because as you know, that's controlled by the people who run the cadastral management. But when I go and split that, what it will do for me is the building will now subdivide itself up and redraw itself based on the rules that go along with that particular site as well. You can see that blue squiggly line going across the top is indicating that's going on, and you can now see that I've got a different readout for that particular building that's in there as well. And that's just one example of that. If I wanted to go now, say, let's pick out a building type, and we'll go and change this to a low-rise office with retail, you'll see that that should actually regenerate those again to a different type of building. Very easy to do. You'll notice one over the back here actually has a little exclamation mark. When I click on that one, if it's the right one, no it's not, it's that one there, what you'll see is when I look on the inspector that there is some sort of violation here. The height violation tells me straight away that the building I've proposed doesn't meet the particular height requirements for that. And I might have heritage items and those sorts of things as well. So it is a very interactive environment that you can work with and get inside your organisation. And it's easy because it's ArcGIS Online. All you've got to do is start to build some of this stuff out. Oh, that's still flowing, is it? Well, we'll just turn that guy off. Go to the next page. So, there we go. Right. So how does it really work? Well, one of the challenges that we're going to find with this is that you really want to be able to get your own planning rules inside this environment. So what we do with this is we actually assist you with bringing in some of those tools. And we're going to be running a evaluation tool set in a little while on the 28th, where you'll actually be able to come in and join us and start to use this and start to work with this. You understand how you actually do the operations dashboard, how you run search filters, all those sorts of things. We'll teach you how to do that. But the urban planning tools then give you the things like what is a plausible building for those particular rules? What are the space capacity management tools that are in there as well? Some of the things around the parcels, bringing those in. You'll understand that as well. So all these things are actually managed inside that environment. One of the hardest things you're going to actually find is translating your planning rules into an ArcGIS Urban piece. And this is really where we like to come along and help you, because we have a spreadsheet, a standard spreadsheet that says this is the planning zone, these are the height rules, these are the heritage rules, etc., that come through. And those planning rules are constantly changing, and we can update those in the ArcGIS space as part of the model that goes in as well. You can see many of those rules are very verbose, and we need to translate those to get those into the environment. Once they're in there, you saw how easy it is then once I have them in there to be able to generate plausible buildings, proposals, scenarios, etc. So the person who's actually licensed to run this is the person who gets a creator level user plus an ArcGIS Urban license. And so that's the editing stuff, that's the building out stuff. Once they have that, then you can share models, you can share the urban tools, you can share the results to everyone inside your organisation or selected people in groups, depending on what their requirements are. One of the important things with this is it's not aimed at the GIS user, it's aimed at the planners. So the GIS user will set up and then give it to the keys over to the planners to actually start working with. But what we really want to be able to do is interact with the public. So because it's ArcGIS Online, that's where they may say, each of these models that I design out, I can then start to share them and make them public, embed them in my web page, embed them on my planning page. That's one of the keys that's associated with this, being able to run this. Now, there is quite a couple of pieces that go along with it. First thing we do is we build an ArcGIS Urban model. And that is our master model that holds all the information in, all the planning rules, all the height overlays, all the suitability indexes, all of those. That's the first piece. And that is actually, we build that with ArcGIS Pro. We then hand it over to our planning environment where they actually can use City Engine, or they can use some of the planning tools in there. There'll be actual planning people who are actually working with that. They can start to work with that at that point. But one of the really, really important things is I've been saying that we can share it to our citizens or our general public, but like I said before, is I can set up a group inside my ArcGIS Online. So I might be Brisbane City Council, for example, or no, was it DNMRE here? I'll set up a group inside my ArcGIS Online account. I'll invite Brisbane City Council to come into that group, some of the users there, they get access to that, and then you get the model, and you can start work on that as the Brisbane City Council people. So they can start to bring in, and the information in the urban database gets translated into your urban database on your local environment. And that's really important. And one of the things that a lot of people sort of get is they go, okay, well, that means that I have sort of my own play pit. And it's all feature service based as well. So it's really user friendly. So if you want to get started on this, if you want to really get an understanding of this, we've got a trial. So we have been running a trial for a few small selected clients. I think it's about 9 clients. But what we're going to be doing on the 28th of November is we're going to be running a fully fledged demo and trial where you can get access to that model. And if you're really interested, on the second page of your Esri app, there is over on the bottom right-hand side, there is actually a ArcGIS Urban trial sign-up. If you want to get on there, use the app, get on there and write. And because we've got about 20 organisations from Melbourne and Sydney who've decided they want to do it, and we'd really like you to come along and do it as well. And so what it will give you is you'll get your creator user, plus you'll get a trial license of ArcGIS Urban, and then all that data that you saw up on the screen there, you'll be able to get access to it and develop your own scenarios. So that's the first one. And that'll run for about 3 weeks. The next one is we do actually run launch kits as well. So there's 2, and those launch kits are where we basically give you the software, and we have professional services come out and help you configure this as well. And you get a couple of scenarios associated with it. It's really a good idea if you're really intent on this to, after you've gone through the trial, to then get some help with that, because sometimes doing the planning and the overlays and transferring those in, we've had experience doing that with a couple of organisations down in Victoria, New South Wales, over in Perth, now that where we've done this, and we can actually start to really make this work, and we know what makes us streamline this now a lot more easily. So we'll go through basically the base deployment, application deployment, how to get those massing models in, build out a couple of scenarios like you saw, and of course the good piece, you get training in this as well as all part of that. And usually it's about 5 to 10 day engagement, depending on the complexity. So I guess the last thing that we really need to understand now is, where are we at with this? Well, we've had version 1 out there for about 4 months now. There's about 3 or 4 customers in Australia. We are going to see that there's going to be a new version come out around Christmas time, and because it's a software as a service, you automatically get the upgrade. There's none of you going, oh, I'm going to do that upgrade. It'll come through. And basically what that will allow us to do is provide the trial experience that you've just seen there. That will actually be part of it. We'll also see some data management and some loading enhancements, because part of our experience with doing version 1 is there's some little tricky things to get data into there. But once we've done that, we'll bring that in as well. And then what we're going to see is next year, around sort of Esri UC, which is usually July, we'll see version 2 come out, or what they're now calling version 2020. They're moving into that sort of space. They don't want a 1.1, 1.3 and all that sort of stuff. What they'll want to do with that, though, is also allow things like a suitability index to come in, where you can say, give me all the buildings that are where there's no heritage listing, the properties are over, say, 1,200 square metres, and I've got a building height limit of, say, 45 stories. It will go through and in my project area find all those things for you. So there's some capabilities coming in at that point as well. So ArcGIS Urban is new. It is software as a service, but it's designed to be simple and user-friendly and really make your life a lot easier in that planning space.